Well, I bid you good afternoon. You are welcome to this video. I'm glad that we have time to share with each other this afternoon. Um, this is the last chapter, the last subject that we will be covering. Tomorrow afternoon, evening, I will be sending out the final exam. It will consist, I think, of three um, questions, and it's only on this chapter and the lecture that attends this chapter that was released last week. There may be an extra credit question, just as there was on the last exam. And many of you, by the way, did an excellent job on that extra credit. Hey, Stephanie.
Hello.
Many of you did an excellent job on that extra credit question. So there may be a fourth question on this final exam that has to do with an extra credit. But again, it's only on the reading chapter 9 and on the lecture that came out last week on chapter 9. It will be out Saturday evening, and it will be due by the middle of next week. And this time I have to have it's got to be due at least by Thursday, because grades have to be turned in on the weekend, and the dean has made it perfectly clear that there will be no late grades for this semester. So please get it in. If you don't get it in by Thursday, then I'm afraid it's going to be a 0 for the exam, because I will have to calculate the grades. But that shouldn't be any worry to anyone, because there's only going to be 3, at the most 4 questions on the exam, and it only covers this one chapter. All right, what we're going to do today is we are going to go over chapter 9, and I have my textbook here pulled up to share with you. This is chapter 9, Virtue Theory. So you're going to read the chapter, hopefully. Now, right here where it says the nature of virtue ethics, make sure you know these several paragraphs pretty well here. Then it goes over to a discussion of the ideal type. And the ideal type in Aristotle is the megala suke. Looks like such with an I looking thing at the end of it. It's called, the Greek translation is the great souled person. For Aristotle, that is the ideal type. That is the person that sets the standard for what ethics is, the megalasuke, the great-souled person. So that's what Professor Poyman is talking about here. He doesn't, I don't think, mention Aristotle's term for that. But that's a very important section of the chapter. And then here, the next section is the ideal individual, and that continues his discussion of the megalasuke, the great soul person. So those are important. You can expect a question about that. Make sure that you know what action-based ethics is. Here are some criticisms of action-based ethics. You need to read that, but Here he distinguishes between virtue-based theory and action-based theory. Make sure you know that distinction. I don't expect you to study that deeply because I don't think Professor Poyman is right about that. And I covered that in the lecture. So then he gives some discussions here about action-based ethics. Some more criticisms. They ignore the spontaneous. Again, that's not so important. All of these things you need, there may be a question about them, but you'll be able to find those in the book. Then in the section on connection between virtue-based ethics and action-based ethics, know that, that's pretty important. The pure virtue-based ethics here, read that semi-carefully. Then on this next page here, standard action-based ethics, the correspondence theory. Make positive that you know the correspondence thesis. That is extremely important. So much of what we do in virtue ethics hinges upon the correspondence thesis. And he goes into a little bit more detail on the correspondence thesis. Then here, he's got a table and then a graph down here at the bottom. Kind of work through, think through that graph and that table, because that helps you connect these foundational virtues with the correspondence thesis and the fundamental principles. The rest of the chapter, read. There may be a question that comes from the rest of the chapter, but most of the questions will come from the things that I have highlighted here: the correspondence thesis, the great souled person. And you will one more time have to tell me what arete is. Now, please never forget that. I talked about that in the lecture. Arete is excellence. And when Professor Poyman talks about virtue-based ethics, he's talking about arete-based ethics. I will ask you a question about our word virtue, which is a poor translation of the Greek arete. I will ask you, what is the difference between our understanding of virtue and the Greek understanding of virtue? The basic confusion that even Professor Poyman has is because of his failure to truly understand the Greek mind when it comes to arete. Very few people do. So they loosely speak of virtue ethics, but I find for the most part that they don't know what they're talking about. In order to understand Aristotle and Plato and the tradition that we're talking about right now, you have to understand the difference between arete and English virtue. That, did I make that clear? How important that is? Okay. That's about all there is. That's really the significant part of this chapter. So I've just given you basically the questions that I'm going to ask. So you got a head start on this, you who are here and those who watch this video. So you know the salient and important points of the chapter. And it's extremely important. Let me tell you while I'm looking you eye to eye or screen to screen, how important it is that you go through the lecture from last week on chapter 9. Do not neglect doing that. If you don't do that, you will be in great peril when it comes to the exam. So that's all I've got on the reading of chapter 9. You need to delve into some of these parts that I have highlighted for you here and read over the others, but focus in on, hone in on, pay attention to the sections that I've highlighted for you. And as usual, if you have any questions, you know how to reach me, and I'm available almost at an hour's notice. So that's all I have. Simple, right? Please tell your friends to watch this video if they want to make a good grade on this exam. And keep in mind that we are down to some hard time frames now. And thankfully, there are only going to be 3 or 4 questions here and not the 10 or 11 or 12 that I typically ask. So you should have plenty of time once the exam comes out Saturday to finish it by no later than Thursday. Even those of you that need extra time, and we do have several, that should give you plenty of time for 4 questions. Okay, now if that's all I have. So I'm very willing to take some questions now for the people who are with me on the quiz. If you have any, I mean on the video. So if you have any questions about the time frame or the chapter or well anything else that occurs to you, unmute yourself and ask me.
Hi, Professor. I'm Stephanie here. So I did read your email.
Charles, you with me here?
Yes, sir. I'll be with you in a minute.
Yeah. I was just wondering like if I could speak to you on here for a minute, or even if we can like schedule a phone call, that'd be great.
Okay.
Just to talk about my
If
situation.
there are no questions,
Can you hear me by any
then
chance?
we will say goodbye.
Can you hear me by any
Stephanie,
chance?
you got anything?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know if my microphone was on or off, but
Oh, I'm not.
yeah, I don't know. I thought it was on, but I was wondering if there was any way that I could speak to you on here, or even if it's through a phone call about
Sure.
my situation in
Sure.
regards to the second exam. So whatever works best.
Okay.
I don't want to take people's time. Whatever works, yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, yeah, Charles. Charles,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. One, did you get my email and my exam attached to it? Did you get that one? The last
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay, great. Can you go over just a second that last thing you said, the difference between our interpretation and the Greek? I didn't quite get that. It
All
didn't.
right. Well, when we speak of virtue, we normally think of things like not smoking or drinking. When the Greeks speak of virtue, they speak well. The lecture on chapter 9 covered this pretty well. But when the Greeks speak of virtue, they speak of fulfilling what your intended purpose was. Like a racehorse, what's the purpose of a racehorse? To win races, right? So so you can talk about a virtuous horse when it comes to the Greeks. A virtuous horse is a horse that does what it's supposed to do. If it's supposed to be a plow horse, it plows well. If it's supposed to be a racehorse, it wins races. If it's supposed to be a battle horse, it helps the rider through the battle. So that's a virtuous horse. It doesn't have anything to do with whether the horse is nice or sweet or doesn't bite you. It just does what it's supposed to do, what its concept is. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
That's the difference between arete. Now, the arete of the human being is to be just, prudent, moderate, and courageous. Those four Greek virtues: justice, prudence, moderation, courage. That's the purpose of the human being. So the good human being is just, prudent, courageous. Got it?
Yeah, I think
It doesn't have anything to do with whether he looks, how he looks, or whether he drinks or smokes.
yeah, human beings or whatever have a noble purpose
Exactly.
instead of a designed following a designed course set of lines, acting like okay, that's the way it's going to go. But it takes an individual to have a noble purpose.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool.
Just Charles, just watch that video. Watch that the lecture.
Yes,
because all of this, and the important part of this is covered in that lecture.
Okay, I just haven't had a chance yet.
All right. Well, that's important. Doing the lecture is important.
Last question. So we turn in the second exam, third, whatever, by Tuesday.
No. I said Tuesday. I'll take it as late as Thursday.
Okay. Are you going to be online? Any more lectures that we can look forward to?
Nope. This is it.
That's not fair. I enjoy listening to you when I can catch you.
Well, just watch that lecture on chapter 9. Make sure you do that because you're not going to do well on the exam if you don't.
Yes, sir. And thank you.
You betcha. I'll talk to you later.
Hi, Cooper.
Bye, Cooper.
Hi, Stephanie. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.